How did a tiny, swampy island with no resources become a global superpower? Welcome to Past Historical Events. This is the story of Lee Kuan Yew, the visionary who built modern Singapore from the ground up. Buckle up for a wild ride through history and ambition. Lee Kuan Yew was born on September 16, 1923 in Singapore, then a British colony. His father was Hakka Chinese and his mother came from the Peranakan community, known for blending Chinese and Malay cultures. Growing up in a modest two-story house at 92 Kampong Java Road, young Harry, as he was known then, was the eldest of 5 children. His father, Lee Chin Koon, worked as a storekeeper, and his mother, Chua Jim Neo, was a skilled cook who ran a catering business. Lee was a bright kid, excelling at Raffles Institution, Singapore's top school. But his childhood wasn't all smooth sailing. The Great Depression hit, and his family faced financial struggles. Still, Lee's sharp mind and fierce determination shone through. He topped exams and dreamed big, even as the world around him was about to change forever. In 1942, Japan invaded Singapore. The British surrendered, and life under occupation was brutal. Lee, just 18, witnessed chaos, scarcity, and fear. To survive, he worked as a translator for the Japanese, learning their language and observing their discipline, lessons that would later shape his governance style. These years were formative, hardening his resolve to never let Singapore be vulnerable again. After the war, Lee won a scholarship to study law at Cambridge University in England. There, he thrived, earned a rare double first-class honors degree in law, one of the highest academic distinctions at Cambridge. He met Kwa Geok Chu, a brilliant student who would become his wife and lifelong partner. They married in 1950, forming a powerhouse duo that would shape Singapore's future. But Lee wasn't just studying law. He was absorbing ideas about governance, economics, and power. He saw how nations rose and fell, and he returned to Singapore in 1950 with a burning vision to free his country from colonial rule and build a nation that could stand tall. Back in Singapore, Lee dove into politics. The city was a mess. Poverty, racial tensions, and communist influence were rife. In 1954, he co-founded the People's Action Party, PAP, with a mission to fight for self-governance. Lee was a fiery orator, rallying workers and students with his sharp intellect and unapologetic pragmatism. He wasn't afraid to challenge the British or local elites, earning him both allies and enemies. In 1959, at just 35, Lee Kuan Yew became Singapore's first prime minister after the PAP won a landslide election. His challenge? Turning a tiny island with no natural resources, a diverse population, and a shaky economy into a viable nation. Singapore was a port city plagued by slums, unemployment, and racial divides between Chinese, Malays, and Indians. Lee's first move was bold. He pushed for Singapore to join Malaysia in 1963, hoping a larger federation would provide economic and political stability. But it was a rocky marriage. Racial tensions and political clashes led to Singapore's expulsion from Malaysia in 1965. On August 9, 1965, Singapore became an independent nation, alone and vulnerable. In a now iconic press conference, Lee broke down saying, "For me, it is a moment of anguish." But this setback lit a fire in him. He vowed to make Singapore not just survive, but thrive. Lee Kuan Yew didn't waste time. With a small but brilliant team, including Goh Keng Swee and S. Rajaratnam, he launched a relentless campaign to transform Singapore. His formula? Pragmatism, discipline, and a refusal to accept failure. Let's break it down. Lee knew Singapore needed to attract foreign investment. He offered tax incentives, built world-class infrastructure, and created a business-friendly environment. He turned Singapore into a hub for manufacturing, electronics, and later, finance. By the 1980s, global giants like IBM and Shell were flocking to the island, and Singapore became known as the East Asian Tiger. Corruption was a disease in post-colonial Asia, but Lee stamped it out. He enforced strict laws, paid civil servants high salaries to deter bribes, and made the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau a feared institution. Singapore became one of the world's least corrupt nations. Lee tackled slums by launching the Housing and Development Board, HDB. By 1990, 90% of Singaporeans owned their homes, a staggering achievement. He also enforced racial integration in housing estates to prevent ethnic enclaves, fostering unity among Chinese, Malays, and Indians. Lee believed in human capital. He invested heavily in education, emphasizing science, math, and English to create a skilled workforce. His meritocracy mantra, "Work hard, rise high," became Singapore's ethos. Lee's government was tough. Strict laws on everything from littering to chewing gum kept Singapore clean and safe. Critics called it authoritarian, Lee called it necessary for stability. By the 1980s, Singapore was a miracle. From a GDP per capita of $500 in 1965, it soared to over $12,000 by 1990. The world took notice. Lee's blend of capitalism, discipline, and long-term planning turned a third-world island into a first-world nation. But Lee's legacy isn't without shadows. His government cracked down on dissent, restricted press freedom, and used defamation lawsuits to silence critics. Opposition leaders like J.B. Jeyaretnam faced relentless legal battles. Lee argued that Singapore's survival demanded stability over Western-style democracy. To him, results trumped ideals. His policies, like mandatory national service and bilingual education, were controversial but effective. Some called him a benevolent dictator, others a visionary who saved Singapore from collapse. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. In 1990, Lee stepped down as Prime Minister, passing the baton to Goh Chok Tong. But he didn't fade away. As senior minister and later minister mentor, he advised Singapore's government until 2011. He remained a global statesman, consulted by leaders from China to the US. Lee's personal life was anchored by his wife, Kwa Geok Chu, who passed away in 2010. They had 3 children, including Lee Hsien Loong, Singapore's prime minister from 2004 to 2024. On March 23, 2015, Lee Kuan Yew passed away at 91, leaving a nation in mourning but stronger than ever. Today, Singapore is a global leader in finance, technology, and innovation. Its GDP per capita is over $80,000, among the highest in the world. Changi Airport, world-class healthcare, and a spotless city are testaments to Lee's vision. But his legacy isn't just skyscrapers, it's a mindset of resilience, discipline, and excellence. Lee Kuan Yew wasn't perfect, but he was a giant. He proved that a tiny nation with no resources could become a titan through sheer will and smart governance. His story challenges us to ask, what does it take to build a nation, and at what cost? That's the story of Lee Kuan Yew, the man who dared to dream big and made it reality. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more stories of history's greatest leaders. Tell us in the comments, what's one thing you admire or question about Lee's legacy? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.